All right, thank you guys for coming to our PLC today. I'm going to present my action research plan for our fifth grade team. The action research plan that I proposed and that I did research on was researching the effectiveness of daily Greek and Latin root-based vocabulary. A large portion of our fifth grade content is derived from Greek and Latin root vocabulary. It's seen on common assessments, it's seen on map testing, it is seen on state assessments, and it's seen in our daily work here in fifth grade. Students interact with this content daily, so the question becomes, is it effective? Is what we're doing with the vocabulary effective? The purpose of this study is to determine the effectiveness of daily Greek and Latin root vocabulary on students' reading scores. So the PLC team was able to look at this study and determine that there was in fact a need for this study because we all agree that as we look at our fifth grade data, vocabulary is something that we constantly struggle with, that they constantly struggle with, and that we need to focus on. So vocabulary is a weak area for our fifth grade students. The research questions for this study, there were 3 guiding questions. Is daily Greek and Latin root vocabulary effective for all students? Are the strategies and activities we're using effective for students? And how can the PLC team, how can we improve upon this process? To start the research, I looked at some literature, some research that's already been done on Greek and Latin root word instruction. The first article that I looked at was the Latin-Greek connection, and there were some really interesting points, and I'm not going to read this whole slide to you, but there are some really interesting points down here in blue. Most academic words in English are derived from Latin and Greek, so in fifth grade it becomes really important for us to teach academic texts. We teach social studies texts, we teach math, higher level math texts, science, and so a lot of those words that they're having to read and comprehend are actually derived from Greek and Latin. Most of the challenging multisyllabic words are derived from Greek and Latin. So as they're reading, even in fiction novels becomes higher, those multisyllabic words are from Greek and Latin. A single Greek and Latin root can be found in or aid in the understanding of decoding 20 or more English words. So if they can understand one root, then that's going to help them decode up to 20 words at a time. And last but not least, because Spanish is also a Latin-based language, using Greek and Latin roots can help bridge the gap between our ELL students. It can help them actually use their home-based language in learning English as well, because both languages are Latin-based. The next research that I looked at talked about students with learning disabilities and using Greek and Latin roots. I know a lot of us have students with IEPs, and we're looking at how we can use Greek and Latin roots, how the vocabulary can reach these students. And sometimes it seems daunting to teach vocabulary, especially challenging vocabulary to students with IEPs, to our lower level students. But I bolded the most important part from this study, that a morphemic approach to vocabulary may equip these students with word analysis skills. So the more that we teach them how to break down words, the easier it's going to be for them to be able to do it on their own in other texts. So it's actually very important for them to be able to look at a deeper conceptual understanding of root words. And I've seen that in my classroom. You're going to see the data here in just a little bit, but I've actually seen my students with IEPs, my lower level students, excel at these Greek and Latin roots because they're understanding what these mean and they're able to apply it other ways. And so going back to the first study, knowing that track and tract mean to pull, so just knowing that one root, they will be able to understand words such as tract, tractor, traction, retract, detract, abstract, trace, contract, contraction, extract, intractable, protractor, subtract, retrace, and many more. But look how many words they would be able to decode just knowing one root. So if you can help them understand one root, they'll be able to work through a whole list of words. And last but not least, we looked at, and this is a strategy that that kind of goes back a long time. We know when we first started teaching or going through our teaching classes, we learned about chunking. And students chunk words, and they learn how to read by chunking words. And Greek and Latin root vocabulary is that. It's chunking. It's looking at that root and then either adding a prefix, adding a suffix. And so research shows that students who chunk words, who break down words, can read, can comprehend at a better level, at a higher level, and the visual processing is stimulated by the presentation method of chunking. So what does this mean for my study? What did I do? First, because I was already doing the vocabulary study in my class. I was already giving them vocabulary words, and Taylor can attest to this because she's in my room helping with that. So they were already doing that. So what I had to ask myself and ask the students was what I was doing meeting their needs? Was it effective? So I gave them a student voice survey, and I asked the students, are these strategies effective for you? Are the flashcards working for you? Are the cut and sort activity, the games that we're playing? Does the homework help you? Would it be better presented a different way? And what else can I do? How can my lessons be adapted to help you learn the words? So I gave them a voice to tell me how to adapt the lessons. And I also gave you guys a voice. I know you filled out the lovely PLC survey that you did in all of your spare time. So I triangulated all those results, and I was able to adapt my lessons to meet those needs and to move the vocabulary forward. And then I also did the research on the Greek and Latin roots. From there, I changed the instruction. I took out some of the things that the students said weren't helping them, and I inserted some things the students mentioned that they wanted to act out the words, get some movement in there. The students said they wanted some time to study together. But surprisingly, the students said that they liked the homework. Students don't ever really say that, but they said that the homework tasks actually helped them to remember the words. And they said that making the flashcards was a good way for them to study. And so some of the things that we were doing in class were helpful, and then I also implemented some things that they wanted. And so then the last thing I did was I analyzed the reading data after 3 weeks of this changed instruction. And what I did was I analyzed the Unit 1 test scores and the last quiz that I gave, and I compared those to last year's test results. And what I found, and I just went through that, is students prefer to learn vocabulary through flashcards, homework, and matching. And that the PLC team, through your surveys, you see vocabulary as essential to student learning. And that Greek and Latin root instruction is essential to reading comprehension and word decoding, with an emphasis on ELL students and those with IEP services. My assessment results were very interesting to see. I was very excited to look at these. The vocab grades, the quiz grades improved significantly, on average 1 letter grade per student after taking the survey and adapting the lessons. So after I gave them the voice, changed my lessons on what they said would help them and based on the research. Last year, the general homeroom population was about 83% average on the quiz, and my special education students were about a 45% on a quiz on average. This year, my students are about an 87% average on the quizzes, but my special education students are about a 93% on their quiz. So they have significantly improved. The reading units tests have also improved. Last year at this time, they were 72% on average, with a 65% with my IEP students. This year, they're at 79%. Vocabulary is still something that we need to work on, but there's 79% now, with an 86% average for my special education students. So the intense vocabulary instruction is definitely helping all of the students, but you can really see the jump with the special education students. They're really benefiting. They're really benefiting. And this is just a graph of that data. So you can see as compared to, this is this year, this is this year, this is last year. So this is the reading, and this is the vocabulary. Just to follow up, the PLC team This is something that I've gone over. It is improving, but vocabulary is still a weak area, so we're going to continue the vocabulary instruction. We're going to continue the focused vocabulary instruction, and we are going to continue focusing on context clue strategies, Greek and Latin roots, and defining unfamiliar words. And in conclusion, the link, after doing this study, the link between rigorous vocabulary instruction and reading comprehension is vital. It is there. In the future, I would like to focus on, or we as a team could focus on, how can we hit, because it is great that we are moving those special education students, we're moving those IEP students. How can we hit those lower level, like our RTI students? I would like to focus on some of my other groups of students. So doing some more research on that. Doing some more research on context clues, using different words in sentences, things like that. But after analyzing my data, it was determined that instruction is effective as shown by the increase in assessment scores, and that strategies can be adapted to show progress. That's my research.
Yay. Thanks, Logan.
Thanks.